Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay Wagner at Scott Wagner and Associates PA. We have offices in Florida and California. Today we are discussing shelter in place and stay at home orders during the coronavirus pandemic and specifically what's an essential business. Um, as we talk about essential businesses and the shelter in place and stay at home orders, this is important because most of these orders that are being issued by states, counties, or municipalities specifically exempt essential business from these stay at home orders. So, what we're seeing is that the general population and the general public is ordered to stay home. Non essential businesses can continue operations as long as they're doing so by telecommuting or other means that don't provide for in office or in business operations. And essential businesses, if you fall within the essential business definition, can continue with their normal business operations with some caveats. So we discuss what is an essential business under these orders. Currently, we have about 22 states plus Puerto Rico that have issued their own statewide stay-at-home orders. I will tell you this number is growing by the day. Even over the past 24 hours, there's been about 4 states that have been added to this list, and I anticipate that we'll see more states being included as the next coming days or weeks. Some states have made these statewide stay-at-home orders indefinite, like California, where others, like Maine, that just announced its statewide order within the past 24 hours, specifies that for now it will last 14 days. And then there's states that haven't issued statewide stay-at-home orders, but we see counties and cities, municipalities within those states issuing their own stay-at-home orders. For example, Miami-Dade County in Florida led the way with issuing a variation of an order, and within the past 24 hours, we've seen Broward County, Orange County, Leon County join in on its own orders, as well as the cities of Tampa and Tallahassee, just for 2 examples there. What we also see is that these counties may have their own guidance that further clarifies the statewide guidance that's issued. For example, in California, we have a statewide stay-at-home order, but we have the Los Angeles County that has further definitions of what a stay-at-home order is and what an essential business is. And then even further, the city of Los Angeles has offered further guidance. This does help with some of the ambiguities and questions that employers and employees might have as to what is an essential business. The other interesting part is that some of the statewide stay-at-home orders may have very broad sectors that are included within an essential business, and then we see counties and cities further clarifying definitions of what would be covered under those sectors in their own regulations. So again, like I said, these are every day growing. So this was actually a map that we got from the New York Times yesterday. It is now out of date because in the past 24 hours we've had more states that have issued their own statewide orders, but it does give you a good idea of the breadth of states that are actually issuing these statewide orders, and I anticipate that we'll see many more states joining in the next coming days and weeks. So the question then is, with these statewide orders, what is an essential business? Because the essential businesses are generally exempt from the stay-at-home orders, and essential businesses can carry on with the business, allowing their employees to come into work. So the question is, what's essential? Well, it's really determined by state and local regulations, and to not further complicate things, those vary state to state and locality to locality. So it's very important for businesses that are operating in multiple locations and especially in different states to make sure that they're complying not only with the statewide regulations, but also potentially the county or city regulations that might deem an essential business. And more confusing, what is deemed an essential business might vary from location to location. For example, gun shops has been a popular topic. Some locations, some states, and some municipalities have said yes, gun shops are considered essential business and can carry on. But most recently, Los Angeles County actually clarified that gun stores are non-essential and ordered those to be shut down. Another example that was surprising to some individuals was that cannabis and marijuana stores, where legal, are actually deemed to be essential businesses and can carry on. So it's important to make sure that if you are a business that's operating in multiple locations, that you are making sure that you're complying with the definitions in those actual areas, as they do vary. The way that we've designated essential businesses by most states has been based on the guidance that was issued from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. It's important to know that the guidance from the Department of Homeland Security is just that, it's guidance. So it's not a federal regulation, but rather it was the federal government's way of issuing some guidance to states and local municipalities that might be wishing to issue statewide orders, what businesses should be deemed essential during the coronavirus pandemic. And I haven't actually seen any state that's really deviated from this guidance. So most states set the essential critical infrastructure guidelines from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security guidance, and then maybe from there go on to further specify sectors and essential workers within that might be considered an essential business. So these guidelines actually list out 16 critical economic sectors of essential business, which we'll cover, that are deemed to be essential business and otherwise recommended to stay open. And again, most states, or almost all states, have adopted that definition of essential business. And then we have other states like California and counties that have gone on to clarify further what is an essential business. So starting off here, we can see that one of the most logical essential businesses that have been covered are healthcare operations. And so under the Department of Homeland Security guidelines, it generally lists hospitals, elder care, home health care workers, medical supply, doctors and dentists' office, veterinary and animal health services. The interesting part is the Homeland Security guidelines just generally list doctor and dentist office and don't further clarify what sort of doctor and dentist office might be permitted as an essential business and what might not. So it's important that if there is no further clarification in the guidelines and you are, for example, a doctor's office, what we've learned is that there are some licensing boards, such as in Texas, if you're in a certain area that's under a stay-at-home order, that might be able to provide clarification as to which sort of doctor's offices are an essential business. For example, is a cosmetic surgery doctor's office an essential business? Maybe not, whereas a walk-in clinic would very well likely in every scenario be deemed an essential business. We have infrastructure that's covered to remain open. So this is going to be your fuel supply, gas stations, telecommunications, airports, transportation. We have manufacturing, food processing, paper products, medical equipment, retail stores, so our grocery stores, pharmacies, convenience stores. Generally for farmers markets, we're seeing only certified farmers markets can remain open, and commonly restaurant and bars, but only for takeout food and no dine-in options. And then we have our regular services like your trash, recycling, mail shipping, laundromats, childcare services, and animal shelters. News media has been blanketed as an essential business that's covered. You have your financial institutions, banks, payroll, your providers of basic necessities, which are food banks, homeless shelters, construction. Now here's another topic where it's not just general construction here that's exempt from any stay-at-home orders, and it's wise, if you are in the construction industry, to consult with any further definitions that might be provided in your statewide regulations, because most of those include construction for the purposes of emergency repair and safety, and maybe excluding things that might not be covered, such as home improvements. We also have defense entities like security related operations supporting the U.S. government or contractors to the U.S. government. And finally, a more broad catch-all is services to maintain safety, sanitation, and essential operations of residents and other essential businesses. So your fire prevention, waste management, janitors, and auto repair. And these, again, are the 16 critical sectors that are determined by the U.S. Homeland Security and, again, guidance, but these are what the common sectors that are being adopted by the state stay-at-home orders that we're seeing. So one of the questions that we're getting is, what if your business is not covered as an essential business, but you think it should be? Do you have options as an employer? Well, absolutely. And the good news is that many of these states have provided mechanisms for entities that might want to be included as an essential business but aren't listed. For example, in New York, there's a mechanism to apply for a relief or waiver from the shutdown orders, and you can do that online. And similarly, Washington State provides a website. Even if you want to seek clarification as to whether or not your business is an essential business, or if you want to get certification that your business is an essential business. So that's generally for the states that have already issued the statewide orders. And we'll discuss other ways that businesses in municipalities and counties can also get clarification as to the essential businesses later in the presentation. What's interesting, though, that we've been seeing is that there are many states, as you saw from the map, that have not yet mandated statewide orders, but we anticipate they might be coming. So, for example, Florida and North Carolina are two states that at this moment have not issued statewide stay-at-home orders. But with businesses anticipating that will come in the coming days or in the coming weeks, we've seen that businesses have already started lobbying efforts to be exempt in that regulation with the states, so that when that regulation does come out, that they've already been covered as an essential business and can carry on. So those are different ways that sectors and companies have been handling the stay-at-home orders even before they go into place. So one of the very common questions that we're getting, especially from employees, is can there be non-essential positions within an essential business? Well, in classic legal terms, it depends. So we do have some states like Washington State that within their own regulations, they've actually designated sectors that are covered within the essential business functions, but then gone ahead and defined what is an essential workforce within those sectors. And this has been very helpful because you might have an entity that's an essential business like a hospital, but the question is, are all hospital employees deemed to be essential workers? That's a question that a lot of companies are grappling with, and guidance like the ones in Washington do provide further guidance to individuals to determine whether or not there's non-essential and essential positions. So again, can essential businesses have non-essential positions? Maybe. Generally speaking, most of the regulations just provide for sectors that are essential businesses, and then say any employees working within those sectors are covered under the essential business. We may in turn and soon find that there'll be further guidance provided for non-essential positions in those different sectors as time continues, but there's fewer locations, actually fewer locations as in fewer states and fewer municipalities that have actually defined an essential workforce. So the next question is, do companies that are essential businesses need certification to continue in business? So let's say you recognize that your business is covered under one of the critical infrastructure sectors, and you wonder, okay, now what do I do next? Do I need any certification? Do I need a letter? Most regulations do not provide that you need any certification to continue in business, and you don't need to give your workers any sort of letter to allow them to continue on with commuting to and from work and doing, if it's done in compliance with the order. And actually, there's some orders, and more than not, we have some orders like New York that provide that businesses that have only a single occupant or an employee, like a gas station, can be deemed exempt just by matter of the fact that there's a single occupant, and do not even need to submit a request to be designated as an essential business. So for those entities, if you're not deemed an essential business, you might still be able to continue on with business if you just have a single occupant or employee in your company. So what if you are an essential business and you're remaining open? Are there certain regulations that you have to follow? Is it business as normal? Most of the guidelines that we're seeing do still require that essential businesses maintain social distancing. Some mandate that social distancing is kept forth, and some actually provide that just do the best that you can. For instance, in Miami County, the order says that there's no limit on the number of persons who are present in an essential business, and that they're encouraged but not required to practice social distancing. Other regulations might provide that if you are going to continue in business, that you have to post. So like Los Angeles County, to be able to stay open, you have to have a post of a sign in a conspicuous place about members of the public not to attend your business if they're experiencing symptoms of respiratory illness, fever, or cough, and also that you have to provide access to hand washing facilities with soap and water and hand sanitizer if you're staying open. So let's say your company's not deemed an essential business. Can you still remain open if your employees are able to telecommute? Absolutely. Nearly all, or if not every single one of the guidances do provide that non-essential businesses can remain open if the employees telecommute or work in a similar capacity of telecommute. So we've seen some articles coming out about businesses that have stayed in business in violation of the order. So what happens if that's the case? And we're getting questions from employees who might say, hey, I don't think my business is an essential business and they're making me come to work anyway, or businesses that are just flagrantly denying that they're part of an essential business. I know one of those popular topics was whether or not the entity GameStop was an essential business, and some questions within the news as to whether or not they should remain open. So what if you have an issue with businesses staying open in violation of the orders? So most of these orders provide for penalties. They can include citations, fines, licensing suspension. Some of them even include criminal penalties and imprisonment. We've actually seen in Los Angeles that Mayor Eric Garcetti has said that repeat offenders who continue to stay in business in violation of the order could have their water and power shut off by the Department of Water and Power. So there are mechanisms in place for regulation, even though we're not likely going to see the sheriff knocking on every door to make sure that businesses are essential or non-essential and evaluating those. A lot of these regulations and locations do provide for a complaint hotline or a complaint mechanism. For instance, in Ventura County in California, we have the sheriff's office has been handling complaints of companies remaining in violation through non-emergency dispatch centers. In Michigan, the Attorney General Consumer Complaint Hotline provides a mechanism for individuals to make complaints if they believe there's a business staying open in violation of the orders. And in Michigan, they've actually provided that local law enforcement will investigate businesses that stay open in defiance of the order. So it's important that if you're a business and you're not sure about whether or not you're an essential business, that you are getting guidance on that. Similarly, there are mechanisms in place for employees who might be concerned about whether or not their employer is an essential business to get some guidance from that from different entities. And again, each county is different as to who is fielding those kind of complaints. There are also some other remedies that might be available under the law, like in California, companies that stay open, those employees might be able to bring unfair competition claims against the employer or third parties. And also, if an individual complains about the fact that their company is staying open in violation of these orders and they're further retaliated against, that might give rise to a wrongful termination or retaliation claim, maybe a whistleblower claim in some states. So it is very important that if you're an employee and you're not sure about whether or not your company is an essential business, that you do seek legal guidance, because there might be mechanisms in place for you to be able to complain and legal protections if you're retaliated against. And similarly with companies, you might get in trouble in more ways than just a citation or a slap on the wrist, even imprisonment if you're violating these orders. So what if you're not sure if your business qualifies? You read, you're not sure, you want to follow the orders. Well, obviously, first read all the orders, especially the ones that provide further guidance, like maybe the county and city regulations. For companies that are operating in more than one location, it's very important to make sure that you're staying in compliance with all the regulations where your entities and employees might be conducting business, to make sure that that you're complying with those accordingly. Like the example of gun shops, gun stores might be permitted in some areas but not others. And lastly, it's always advisable, if you're not sure if your business qualifies as an essential business, to consult with an experienced labor and employment lawyer who can give you answers with your compliance questions.